relationships at the heart of your fundraising. And so if you want to learn more about that, again, please reach out. We are really excited to talk to you about the services that we can offer. So with all of that out of the way, I'm really excited to turn the mic over to Barbara for our awesome webinar today.
All right, thank you, Wendy. Let me get my screen going here. Okay. There we go. Perfect. All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining this afternoon. I am, or morning, whatever part of the world you're in. I know there's some folks from the West Coast, so good morning to you all. I'm so thrilled to be here. I am a career fundraiser. I'm one of those rare unicorns that has been in this space my entire career. And I spent the first 15 years in-house working in big shops, like national organizations, international organizations, and universities. And 15 years ago, I founded Windmill Hill Consulting to bring the experiences that I gained in-house in annual giving, major gifts, and campaigns, and bring that into the sector as in all of the clients with whom we work. And I also have the great fortune to be able to give back in a lot of different ways. So being able to present on webinars like this, and being active in the AFP, the Association of Fundraising Professionals. I'm chairing the research committee for the Giving USA Foundation, and also on the board of the Better Business Bureau's Wise Giving Alliance and the Giving Institute. So I play a number of different roles to contribute to the strength and health of this sector. And am delighted to be able to share some things that I've learned over the course of my career about making the ask. And what I want to share, what I want to talk with you about is, I didn't want to isolate this to just major gift fundraising or large gift asks, because that doesn't exist in isolation. In order to be successful in making one-on-one asks, whatever the level of gift that you're soliciting for, you have to have those other fundamental pieces in place so that you've got an engaged donor base, you've got donors and potential donors who are curious and inspired by the work that you're doing, in a way that the solicitation becomes a natural part of the conversation that you have with them, whether it's at scale or one-on-one. So you'll hear from my thoughts this afternoon a couple of different ways of how to put in place and considerations that you want to think about for understanding what drives donors in the first place, decisions, how their decisions are made, how to think about soliciting both at scale in all of your larger, wider donor engagement and touch points. And then what are some things to consider when you are building towards a major gifts program, large gifts program, whatever you want to call it. And throughout all of this, I will be really underscoring that fundraising isn't just about asking for money. It's not a monologue that we are constantly pitching at our audiences and our stakeholders. The most transformational gifts that I've seen, that I've given, that I've witnessed and been part of, and again, whatever the amount is, have always come from that dialogue and conversation. Because when I have been in my baby fundraiser days, when I went in just pitching all the time, it resulted in nothing. So I want you to be thinking about this as, how do we best set ourselves up for a conversation that can lead to a gift? So in order to get to that point of understanding what needs to be in place to get to a gift, we have to start with an awareness of what drives donors in the first place. So I want you to, if you can, put into the chat, why do you think donors give? What is the thing that really compels them to make charitable contributions? And you might even draw from your own personal experience as a donor. Why do donors give? Yep, wanting to feel good, wanting to make a difference. They're passionate about the cause, want to make a difference, connection to the cause, be part of something bigger. Thank you, thank you. It makes them feel good. Yep. Support good work, a sense of a community. Yes. All of these things. This is great. Personal connection because they're asked, right? This, they feel needed. They believe in the work. Tax write-offs, maybe we'll see. Similar lived experience. Yes, this is exactly right. This is one study. It is now a little bit dated, but I have found it is pretty consistent with other research I've seen. And this is, I like this particular chart because it kind of encapsulates all of the causes, all of the reasons. Um, at the top of every single study I've seen about what drives donors, it is that belief in the mission. It is the belief that their gift can make a difference. And in fact, you will be able to tell more about a person and who they are and what's important to them by the way they give and by where they give and how they give and get involved. Those are the nuggets of their life story that come into their philanthropy. And so that mission will most likely have a particular cause, particular resonance with them. And as fundraisers, it's up to us to uncover what that resonance is. So that's the prime driver. And it is, in fact, the biggest differentiator between someone who's actually going to give us a contribution and continue to give us a contribution, and those who won't ever be prime for our transformational gift. That sense of impact. So donors do want to know, is my gift going to make a difference? It's not just, did you get my gift? So that's the importance of thank you notes. It's how is my gift going to make a difference? And did my gift actually do anything to help your work? Those three questions are always coming in the donor's mind when they make a contribution. That personal satisfaction. So they feel good. Somebody put in the chat, they feel good about this. Yes, absolutely. We see that there's sort of a habit of giving. So once they've given, if they feel pretty satisfied, they're going to probably continue to give. Again, most likely because these other conditions are in place. It's something that really resonates with them. They're feeling like their gift is making a difference, and they feel happy about that. There are other benefits here as well, other reasons. Tax benefit is really quite low, and I'm not totally surprised by that because, and again, this is from U.S. Trust and Bank of America's study of high net worth philanthropy. So these are donors who are high net worth. They certainly in 2016, they would have been able to itemize their charitable contributions as a deduction. And it's the tax benefit that doesn't is so low because in fact they're going to give anyway, and so that it's not necessarily that they're looking to make contributions so that they can minimize their tax liabilities, which of course is likely, but they are choosing the organizations that they want to support. Oh, and by the way, they might be able to itemize that at some point. With the Tax Cut and Jobs Act in place since 2018, the number of households that could itemize decreased significantly. However, as we've seen, generosity is stronger than ever, and we want to ensure that we're not relying on tax benefit as the only reason why people give, or the main reason, because it's all of these other causes and ideas. All right, so we've heard from donors about what's important to them in making their giving decisions. We also know, in fact, that there is a chemical change that happens in our brain. So I'm going to geek out a little bit on neuroscience for a second. We know from neuroscience and behavioral science research that for example, when this is your brain here on this big picture here, and this inset is your brain on philanthropy, those parts of the brains that are orange are the reward centers of the brain. So they have lit up in this instance with that subject who is being asked questions about their volunteer roles and their giving patterns, where they give, what drives them to give, and so forth. And those parts of the brain we're firing off. So the oxytocin, the dopamine, the serotonin, all of the hormones that are released when we're doing things we like, when we're with people we love, when we're eating that delicious piece of chocolate cake, or maybe the Halloween candy tonight. Those chemicals that are being released and make us feel good are also being released when we're thinking about who we're going to volunteer with, when we've volunteered and we're coming home and reflecting on that experience, when we're making gifts and being asked for gifts. So all of that is creating that sense of that true chemical release of feeling good and a social bonding. We feel connected to the mission that we've now supported. We feel connected to the other donors and other volunteers who are part of that. And we know from other research that there is a link between charitable contributions and volunteerism and a person's perceived sense of happiness, health, and wealth. And so giving is not just writing a check flippantly or making an online contribution with very little thought. There are so many now correlations that we understand about how it helps us feel and how both physically and emotionally. But with all that said, if you've ever seen me write about anything or heard me present at any other point, you know that I can't miss an opportunity to talk about the abysmal donor retention that's in our sector. So the reality is that donors do stop giving. And you might say, yeah, but we've just heard all these other reasons why giving feels great and volunteering feels great, and all these other reasons that it doesn't make sense why they would stop giving. But we have a problem in our sector because on average, 60% of donors are not continuing to give. First-time donors, 80% of those first-time donors are not making a second gift. That part is squarely in our court as fundraisers and nonprofit leaders to be reevaluating how we think about our engagement post-gift. So this is one study. Again, I've seen a lot of different ones, a number of different ones as well. The bottom line is that donors stop giving when they feel like they're not seen, when they feel like that it is impersonal communications. So in other words, adding them to your mailing list and saying, check, we've stewarded them, doesn't work. It doesn't count. Donors want to know, do they know who I am? Do they understand why I'm giving? Are they going to share information with me that I'm interested in? And is it correct? Is it personal? Is it something that will continue to answer those questions? Was my gift helpful? How is my gift going to be helping you make a difference? So let's just stop. Let's take one more side trip to down the psychology, the neuroscience space to understand what drives generosity. You've seen the research, you've understood that there's a correlation between all of this. But at its core, who we are as human beings also shows up in how we are as donors. We are always, whether we realize it or not, we are always trying to move towards who we ideally want to be. We want to be seen as generous, kind, unless, of course, you're a sociopath, in which case none of this applies. But we want to be seen as generous. We want to be seen as kind. We want to be seen as a champion of whatever the issue is, an activist for whatever the issue is. So all of these things, every action that we take, every gift that we make, every petition that we sign, so forth, every time we volunteer, are pieces of that puzzle of who we see ourselves ideally being. So everything we create in our engagement strategy and in our communication with our donors has to keep all of this in mind, because the worst thing we could do is to diminish that real strong warm glow, that feeling of satisfaction because when they've made that gift. And the worst thing we could do is to completely squash all of that by impersonal communications, by not creating a dialogue in either at scale or one-on-one in a way that allows them to step further into being who they want to be ideally. So we know that there's a customer journey, a donor journey, whichever industry you're in, that generally has these components. Now, as we all know, it doesn't always go step by step along this way. Sometimes it goes from awareness to conversion to retention pretty quickly. But in some way, shape, or form, all of these factors of being aware of a cause, thinking about the role that they want to play, converting that interest into action of some kind, hanging on to them in some way, and then allowing them to be champions and inspire others in different ways. All of that comes into the donor experience in some way. But in order to start to put in place the pieces to build towards an ask and thinking about that continuum of steps, we want to start with understanding who's our donor audience, who's already investing in us. And one very simple way of thinking about this is just doing a scan of who your donors are now, who your current donors are, who your new donors are, who your lapsed donors are, because as you saw from, or as you heard a few slides ago, on average, 80% of first-time donors are not making a second gift. So that's an opportunity to really address and double down on. Those who've stopped giving to you, it's curious to know why they stopped giving to you. And those who are continuing to give to you, we can't rest on our laurels and say, that's great, we're going to count on them again and do minimal stewardship and engagement, because just because they've given and they're in that habit of giving. We can never assume that that's going to be continuing. So we have to think about these donors are who we're going to be asking for and maybe considering for a larger transformational gift from the people who are already investing in you. So start that conversation with them. As I mentioned, it gone are, and really probably never were, the days when we're constantly pitching one-way conversations or monologues, if you would, with our donor audiences. It needs to be a two-way street. And so things like a survey that you can send out maybe once a year, thinking about those segments that I just shared, include, of course, non-donors who are on your mail file now, because they might not have ever really thought about making a gift for some reason. Maybe you've suppressed them in your mailings because they were non-donors, and in their mind, they're getting your emails and other communications, and they probably have already thought about that, though they hadn't thought about making a gift. So consider finding out that nugget of their life story. What's important to them? Why did they choose your organization to make a gift? What was the experience like? Whether they made a check, where they wrote a check in the mail and they received your print piece, or they made an online contribution. And you might ask, what was it? What was that experience like? Is there anything that you can do to reduce the friction, if any existed? What do you know about their interests, and would they like to hear from you? For sure, that's a good one, because if they say yes, I'd like to be, kept in touch. Great, add it to your list of people to call. And you might also ask, what do you want to hear from us about? Because one of the reasons why we know donors stop giving is it's impersonal communications. It's stuff that doesn't really interest them. So ask them, what are some things that you would like to hear from us? Maybe they don't want to get your standard newsletter you send out to everybody, but maybe it's one aspect of your program that you can customize and tag in your CRM, so that, if you've got a scholarship program, or if you've got a particular distinct area of your work, you can tag that and then make sure that you reach out to those donors with a very specific update. Because at the fullest scale of your donor engagement, it has to be multi-channel, and it's got to be a lot of different touch points, both print and digital, that are telling your story in lots of different ways. Thank yous, absolute thank yous. You can't thank enough. In person or virtual communication and conversations with your staff, your CEO, invitations to events, other little reports of impact. We work with a client and we do a bi-monthly appreciation report, where we're featuring a different story of somebody who has been part of the program. And it's just a really nice, short, warm email that has pictures and tells a beautiful story, so that donors feel they can see that connection. Because in everything that we do, we have to avoid talking about us all the time. I'm giving hat tip to Tom Ahern, because I think he was the one who first coined this phrase, or at least in my mind, he first coined this phrase, the we-itis. It's all about us. donors in any way, whether it's again at scale in all of your ongoing communication, or as you think about who you're going to start to build towards a large gift ask, it's always about what's of interest and importance to them. We think as fundraisers and nonprofit leaders that we've got to be talking about ourselves. Look at all the things that we're doing. Look at how great we are, how much progress we're making, which is important. However, the donor wants to understand, do you know, or do you want to know who I am? Do you want to understand my story? Do you want to share with me how I can help you achieve the solution that we both are passionate about? So we have to rephrase the we're doing all these great things, which is important, but in a way that doesn't make it feel like, oh, you've got it well in hand. You don't really need my help. I'm going to go find another organization that might need my support a little bit more. And that all of this is a mindset shift, and it starts with the language that we use. So a good exercise for any, and of course not right now, maybe as we're all nose down in year-end fundraising, but think about how our donors might feel when they read our communications or visit our website. Are we talking in a we-itis kind of language where it's look at us, look at us? Are we stoking that warm glow? So remember I shared that the organization that we are feeling good, we're feeling happy when we are making gifts, when we're volunteering. The language we use, particularly like this is a thank you letter I got a number of years back. And oh my gosh, I can't tell you how deflated I felt when I read this. Thank you very on behalf of the board. I don't know who the board is. I know about this mission and I care about this mission, but there's nothing here that tells me your gift is going to get put to work to do this, this, and this, or this is the problem that we are solving and we're so glad that you're with us. So there's that. And then this is another that was also a thank you. It was a summary, but it was just it made me feel so impersonal. So we have to be reshifting our mindset to, are we squashing in sort of diminishing that excitement that follows a gift? And are we tapping into what we know as human beings? We have a feeling of, we all have a need for autonomy. We want to be able to do things. We want to have that sense of competence that we can do things, so we can choose what we do, that we can do, and that connectedness that we're with others that we're doing. So here's one example of how you change that language. $10 today doesn't buy miracles, but it buys Tony time to get his childhood back and become a miraculous adult like you. That's showing that my $10, oh, I can do that. I can help Tony. I don't know Tony, but I can help him. Thank you in Tony's name for being a part of his story and a friend of Autism Voice, donating to fight autism. Again, ties all three of those things in place. I feel good because I've chosen to make a gift to this organization. I feel I've been able to do that, and I'm now connected to both the organization and to someone named Tony. Because as Penelope Burke says in her book, Donor-Centered Fundraising, underperformance is a failure to communicate. So if we aren't thinking about all the touch points and all the information we can share and connection that we can create with our donor audience in a way that helps them understand the role that they are playing in our organization and our success, they're not going to give. What she says in interviewing thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of donors is that they want three things. They want to know that their gift was received. They want to know how it's being used, and they want to know, did it actually make a difference? Again, so when we are crafting our stewardship plans, it needs to ensure it's covering all three of these things. And again, it has to be multi-channel. We get over reliant on our digital communications, but guess what? I know I do a whole mass control alt delete to a lot of emails in my inbox, and our donors are the same way. So all of the time you spend focusing only on your email communications will likely get lost when it's not accompanied by print, or when it's not accompanied by some sort of phone call, which is largely underused. Now, the stories we tell have to be inspiring and trigger an emotion. Personally, I love bringing in stats into fundraising messaging, but I have learned over the years that that completely squashes the reader's connection to what that ask is. And we have research that shows that giving drops up to 50% when stats enter the picture. But there's a balance. So the stats can make us feel overwhelmed because maybe they're too they're too overwhelmed, they're too much. What's my $100 going to do to eradicate childhood hunger? I can't possibly solve that by myself, or with my small gift, or even my large gift, right? But we balance it, right? And so it becomes this kind of dance between sharing some data points and telling stories. The stories are what connect us more than anything. And they are the things that we are hardwired to remember and hardwired to resonate with. And then we can share some stats that can show the difference that collective generosity and contributions can have. Here's a different way of thinking about and avoiding that we-itis. So here, UNHCR does this fantastic example of a newsletter that's not just all the things we've done. It's because you care. Oh, you've got my attention. Her undefeatable spirit, your persistent compassion. Oh, I do want to be seen as compassionate, right? So it's a reshifting of how we tell our stories and bring our donors into our audience. This is another example. Again, as we're all thinking about our year-end language and messaging, it starts with stories. There's nothing here that says about the organization, about who's there involved. These are examples of me and of me connecting to the person in this story, this child in this story. So if everything you're doing in looking at your communications, both digital and print, needs to be thinking, how do we think our donor feels? And are we telling that story arc in a way that's telling the before and the after and that story of one? So it's unfinished, and that donor can feel like, oh, here's before, here's what could be after, and here's the space that I can help fill with my contribution and that of others. And it carries forward in the stewardship pieces that we send out after the contribution is made. Here's a great example of connecting those who are benefiting from and will be part of a program that is made possible by a donor who's one of many who are supporting this organization. And it's, again, changing the voice. It's connecting back. The organization is still important, but it's not in the way of the donor and who is benefiting. So all of this you might be like, well, hang on, I came here to learn about how to make an ask. That's the base, the foundation, because if you don't get those components right, it's going to be impossible to set the stage for a transformational ask. Because all of those components come into play. We often, many of us are boards. I'm on boards. I've worked with boards. So I'm going to say this, both wearing a board hat and as a board trainer. Our boards and our nonprofit leaders sometimes think that large gift philanthropy is going to drop out of the sky. Can't we just get Mackenzie Scott? Can't we just call Bill Gates? Can't we just get all of these other philanthropists who are not necessarily connected to our cause? Your large gift donors are going to be people who already support missions like yours. They are not, let's not start with who has money, who has capacity to make a large gift. That's important, but it's not the driving factor when you're deciding and figuring out who your major donors are. They are likely people who believe in your cause, who you have access to, and who has the capacity to make a large gift. It has to be these three. And I can tell you from 30 years of experience that those transformational gifts have always come when those three are in place. If we ever asked a donor to give just because they had large capacity, we often did not get that transformational gift because this wasn't a cause that was resonating with them. Okay, think about one of the first slides, that this was a cause that's important to them, and it was where they felt their impact would be made. And that belief to me is the most non-negotiable factor in criteria when you're evaluating who your major donors are going to be. The capacity, yes, perhaps. Access, yes. But if they have large gift capacity and you have access to them, but this is not the thing that lights them up, you're not going to get that gift. And major gift solicitations, the successful ones are always the 5 rights. It is the right time, it's the right cause, and you learn that from building over time. Conversations, you're hearing what gets them excited, you're understanding what brought them to your organization. You might be testing out different programs within your mission, that seeing where they are excited and interested. The right person. I have done solicitations that did not go well because I knew I wasn't the right person. The right person was a board volunteer who didn't have time to be in that meeting, and felt like they could allocate it to me. The right amount. So by having conversations and by learning what makes that donor, what is important to them, how they make giving decisions, maybe other charitable commitments they have, I start to piece that together. And the right way. The most successful solicitations have always been just something that comes up as we are having conversations, as they're getting to know the organization, as I'm getting to know who that donor is. It could be in person. It could be doing a donor visit or a donor trip. It could be over lunch, maybe in a more formal meeting. It could be a lot of different ways, but when all of these are in place, and you do this through very careful planning and strategy, then it's successful. And this just came out. Professor James is just one of the most renowned researchers. He does a lot of plan giving research, and he's done a lot of major gift research as well. And this just came through my feed not that long ago, and it really struck me because it kind of underscored what I've learned throughout my career, that it's always about the donor connection and motivation. So if we don't do enough of our due diligence as fundraisers, again, both at scale, but in those one-on-one relationship building, and then it's not going to be successful. And look at this, the high performer fundraisers are engaging the donor properly over time. They're acting as their guide. They're providing real value and a VIP donor experience. And so transformational giving is not about numbers. It's not about let's just solicit all of the people in our pipeline who we think have capacity. It is about really understanding who are the ones that we prioritize, and how do we start to qualify those who are interested in becoming more involved and in making larger gifts. I talked before about the stories. When you get to the point of major gift ask, of a transformational gift ask, your ask has to be big and bold. It has to be something that your organization cannot do on its own. And that's then where the space opens up for the donor to start to see where their large gift, their big, bold gift can play a role. Let me share with you an example. So a number of years back, I was working with an organization, and they were about to embark on their first ever capital campaign. They had a very small donor base, and they were quickly trying to build it up and trying to prioritize how they were going to get to those large gift asks. And one of the first things that we did was sort of do a whole network of a mapping network of their networks to understand who might be people that they need to engage in this campaign, um, current past volunteers, current past donors, networks of boards, and so forth, all of the likely suspects. And this particular person had come up in conversations, and she had been, in fact, one of the co-founders of the organization probably 30 years before. She had been very disengaged. She kind of maybe had been around, or she at least still knew people who were involved, but she had not really been a consistent supporter over time, certainly in the recent past. There was no sense of what her gift capacity was. There was there wasn't really a sense of whether or not she had that capacity for a large gift, and the organization wasn't 100% sure how to involve her. So we ended up, the executive director reached out to her, introduced herself, and and she invited us to her home for lunch. And over the course of the lunch, we talked with her about the moment in time for that organization, the plans that were in place to grow it and to get its own permanent home. And I was watching her, and it was fascinating because this was an organization that was small, and they had this big vision that was right in that moment impossible to reach. And I could see her, and I could see the wheel starting to turn and the light bulb over her head going off. And at the end of that lunch, she concluded and said, I think we need to, I'd like to host another lunch, and I'd like to invite so and so and so and so. And she did. And over time, that organization and that executive director and the volunteer leaders who were involved built that relationship, started telling her more about the plans and the vision that they had on scaling this organization beyond anyone's wildest imagination. And ultimately, she ended up making a transformational gift. And I went up to her at the groundbreaking, and I asked her, I reintroduced myself. This was years later. And I said, I'd love to know, how does all of this make you feel? And she said, we never dreamed this big. And so that, to me, as a fundraiser, sort of stopped me in my tracks, because that was the essence of a transformational ask. It was bigger and bolder than anybody could have possibly imagined. And that's what inspired her to step up in an incredible leadership way to make that gift possible. So big gifts come from big dreams, and it often takes time to develop. Um, it was also, we had made these assumptions of who we thought, oh, well, she's not been connected with us in a long time. And maybe she has capacity, maybe she doesn't, I don't know. The reality of all of this was that it was about storytelling. It was about a problem that was being solved in a very specific way. And she could see those results, and she could be part of that story. Oh, and by the way, some of this was still a plan in process. So we, as fundraisers and as nonprofit leaders, get stuck in this mindset of like, all of our plans have to be perfect. We've got to have everything buttoned up when we're putting our best foot forward. And our donors, especially when it comes to major gift asks, our donors actually want to know that unfinished plan. They want to understand what's going into the solution that you're trying to put in place. And it's absolutely okay to say we're tossing around a couple of different ideas, and we'd love to bounce them off of you to see what your reactions are. That kind of conversation with a major gift donor is absolutely powerful, because it brings them into the behind the scenes work of what you do as an organization. And it helps them to then start to see where their philanthropy might come into play. So think about the relationship building, the storytelling, the vision, and the big bold problem and solution that your organization is best positioned to put in place. Think about who else needs to be a part of the work and the relationship that you're building with that potential donor. Remember too that for any of these large gift asks, it's always about that, of course, that impact, that connection. and that legacy. So a part of that conversation you might have at some point is what is the legacy that you would like your gift to have over time or with our organization? Or tell me about how your giving decisions shape the legacy you want to leave behind ultimately in all of your charitable contributions. You might also be asking at some point, what are other ways you want to be personally involved in this work, with this gift? You're always going to be asking about what kind of recognition they want to have. And it doesn't have to be a name on something, or whether it's on a wall or a named room or a building or whatever it might be. But asking them, what is a meaningful way to steward and recognize this gift? And so there are, when you are thinking about who your major gift pipeline is, who are those bigger gifts that you're going to be soliciting, the same approach that you do at scale and the multi-channel approach is what you do, but on a micro level. So this is where you map out, as you kind of think about, okay, I'm going to solicit John and Jane Smith in August of next year. And in order to do that, I'm going to ask them for a $50,000 gift. And in order to do that, what are the things that I want to learn about them. I want them to know about us. Where are opportunities to involve them in our work? And you can start to map out a step-by-step plan of visits, of information to share, questions to learn and ask of them, so that when you get to that moment or preparing for that moment of the solicitation, you have figured out what the right ask is in terms of amount, the purpose, the people to involve, the timing, and the way. And if you are thinking about preparing for a large gift ask and you can't answer all of those questions, do we have the right people around the table? Do we know, is this going to be successful? And if your answer is, I don't know, maybe, go back a bit, go back a couple steps and make sure that you can confirm what those are. Now, here we are, Halloween. We are shoulder deep, I guess you'd say, or nose down in all of our year-end planning. This period of time does not exist in isolation from the rest of the year, of course, right? So what we've done up until now will set the stage for how our year-end campaigns go. But that said, thinking about the communications, the messaging you're sharing, and those segments. So you have, of course, realistic, you have the reality is you've got goals that you need to be meeting or trying to meet. So do some analysis of your Libon, so who hasn't yet made a gift but has supported us in the past, of your current and your new donors. Ask them again for another gift. Of course, now if they made a gift with a couple weeks ago, you can probably suppress them from any of your other appeals. But anyone who's made a gift this year, aside from the last month, first-time donors, absolutely be asking again, because if this isn't a cause that's important to them, they will, and they feel like they can see the difference that their gift is making. Then an additional ask is not going to offend them. And the very worst thing they'll do is just toss out the letter, delete the email. But the point is, it becomes a cycle of regular asking, thanking, absolute meaningful thank yous, and reporting back, and they can see that loop on a regular basis. Those who haven't been active, we will often dismiss them, right? Because if they haven't given to us, and we have to think about our budgets for print, for direct mail pieces, we might say, oh, we're going to just not mail to our Cybons, those who haven't given to us in the last couple of years. But as I talked about earlier, the surveys are a really wonderful way to try to reconnect with those who have stopped supporting you, because there might have been a legitimate reason. They might have just not realized that they had stopped giving, that they hadn't made a gift recently. We're all super busy, and especially nowadays in our hyper-connected world, we just don't, we can lose track of things, and they might be getting your communications and not realizing that they actually didn't make a gift. So that's important to find out if there's anything on their minds that you need to know of why they stopped giving. But I would say absolutely, and keep them as a part of your solicitation pool. And especially if they had been a longtime donor and stopped giving, that's worth a phone call to say, hey, love to just give you some updates. We've been doing some hard work and such in these areas, and it's all because of donors like you and the support you've been so generous with. Love to provide a little update and see if they will take that call and understand a little bit more about the work that will continue to happen because of their renewed generosity. I would say, in terms of inactive donors, research has shown that past 2 years, even maybe three, the reactivation rate's pretty low. It's probably maybe 2%, 3% at most. So I don't recommend going past that. Maybe once in a while, you might do a larger inactive file mailing to see who you might recapture in your communications in your in as a donor. But generally, what I've seen is that 2 years is kind of that cutoff point, and the reactivation rate is pretty low. And then, of course, your current and past boards, your current and past volunteers, absolutely making sure that they have made their gifts before the end of the year. And those, of course, require personal phone calls. All right, so uh, this has been a kind of a mad around the world look at how you make the ask, whether it's at scale or in one-on-ones, and the principles all apply. And you can't get to those larger gift success without the pieces, other pieces of the puzzle in place. The strong storytelling, the curiosity and the interest to know who about that donor and what drives them, and then the opportunities to invite them in to be part of that bigger solution and that bigger problem solving. And year end is just one part of everything else that we're doing. And so don't disappear from your donors, whether it's a major gift ask or your everyday donors. Don't disappear and just default to automated newsletters and think, check, we're done. They should be reading this and they should be keeping up to date on who we are. Think about this as, and then you suddenly resurface with like a bombardment of emails and print pieces and calls and everything else at year end, because guess what? Everybody's doing it. So think about this as one part and learn from this in January when you're evaluating all of your all of your results. What do we need to do differently next year so that we continue to engage and connect with our donors? All right, you're going to get these slides. There's a QR code a couple slides back with a recipe of major gift fundraising success. I hope you'll download that. You're absolutely welcome to keep in touch with us. We have a mastermind coaching cohort that we're going to be launching in January or February. So if you want to get on the wait list, absolutely welcome to do that too. Okay, with that, I'm going to stop sharing. And Wendy, I think I've been seeing the chat and the Q&A exploding. So I think we have a lot to cover.
Yes, a lot of thank yous in the chat. That was a really wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. We have a lot of questions. We'll try and get to as many as we can.
Yep.
We'll start from the top. So this was going back to talking about donor surveys from Erin. We have tried to send out surveys, and last time we got 0 replies. Do you have tips on how to improving this? Some other people voiced a similar struggle.
Yeah, you know what? It's hard for me to give a definitive answer because I don't know more from Erin about what she's tried, how she's asked, and so forth. But what I will say, kind of as a blanket response, try out different times to mail that survey. So, for example, we did one for a client last year, and we mailed it. I don't remember when, like in August. And then we did it again this year. We mailed it a couple weeks later and had a very different response rate. So it could be timing. It could be the length of the survey. It could be the kinds of questions. If it feels like it's too long, it's going to take too long to answer, then you might shorten it. My friend and colleague Roger Craver has, who's also my fundraising hero, he has a very simple 3-question survey that he has found has worked really well. So it might be something that you do, you send out as a quick Survey Monkey or Jot form or something, that with those 3 questions, you can just Google Roger Craver survey questions. And they're 3 and they're super simple. And you might test it as maybe following the gift. So someone makes a gift, they get their automated thank you, hopefully. They're going to get a print thank you, hopefully. And then maybe another email touch point is those 3 questions. And see if you can test it out that way. And you might also do some phone calls. So if you haven't if you don't get any responses, pick a subsection of that audience, of your donor audience, and have volunteers call them and see if you can get a few of that information from those people. Because again, remember, well, our inboxes are just flooded and completely, like, I know my personal inbox is a whole hot mess. So the more I can like control alt delete, I'm going to do it. And so it might just be a combination of any of that.
Yeah, you're not alone in that. I this too.
I feel seen, Wendy.
Sheila is asking, do you have guidance about the proportion of direct mail versus electronic and social media? How many direct mail pieces to send versus how many emails, etc.
So I'm going to give the typical consultant answer that it depends. It depends on your audience. It depends on what your donors and your recipients are used to. I would say it's probably very reasonable to mail 4 pieces, snail mail 4 letters, because we know that from research that letters, emails that are sent out and web promotion and stuff, they probably have like a 6% response rate, at least in one study I saw. When there was a print piece that accompanied it, it lifted it by 30%. So truly, going back to my earlier comment about the over reliance on email, it really, if I get a print letter, I'm going to set it aside because it's a reminder to me, oh, I got to do that. I've got to make my gift. I've got to whatever. And then I get an email. Then it's like, oh, right, I got that letter. Where did I put that? So I would say try, if you can, to build in a budget for 4 pieces. You might also, if you can, also have some of those non-solicitation, like maybe it's a 1-page update report, or some other appreciation piece that can be print, because again, it's just one more thing that's tactile. It gets people's attention. They'll hold on to it a lot longer. And even though you might have a harder time correlating whether it has a good ROI, you can trust that we have a lot of research that shows, both on the for-profit in the retail side and on the nonprofit side, that print still drives results. So people might go online still to make their contribution. It doesn't mean that that's how they want to be communicated with. So I would balance that. And where you can, bring in more print to your digital communications.
An anonymous attendee is asking, how do you avoid saviorism when telling stories? Save this person from a life on the streets makes me cringe.
Yep, totally hear that. And it is that fine balance, right? Because you want to be able to show the work that you're doing and the results that are happening without making it feel like it becomes a sort of savior story. And I would bring in that's why those human elements of who that person, that the story that you're telling, who is that person? What what happens with their life because of your organization? But then again, you've got to take your organization out of it because you want donors to connect with who they are. And there are lots of great examples of ways that you can reduce that saviorism tone. It is a fine balance, though. So I would say don't test it in your own writing. See how it feels by profiling those stories, profiling the before and after because of your program. And then if it still makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable, then try to play around with the storytelling and the narrative so that you all feel comfortable as an organization, and it still gets that effect of the donor collectively, your donors collectively are partnering with you to make that life a different one, a transformed one.
We're close on time. I have two awesome questions that I want to get to, if that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yep.
Ricky is asking how many contact attempts before you take a prospect out of your list?
Yeah. So I have heard a couple of different adages. One is that it takes up to 7 attempts. And I think this actually comes from like sales and marketing, that it takes up to 7 attempts, touch points and attempts before you can to actually reach somebody. I would say, in thinking about a major gift portfolio, definitely consider that. Don't give up after 1 or 2 attempts, because again, we're all really busy, and their responsiveness doesn't reflect their disinterest. But I would reevaluate every quarter. And if by the end of a year you still haven't been able to connect with that person, you still haven't they've been unresponsive, and maybe it's not the right attempt or the right focus of your energy, still keep them in your lists and connecting with them, but maybe don't put them as a high priority, or find somebody else who might be able to get to them and connect with them, and then bring you into that conversation. But I would don't this all of this is about grit and persistence, and not harassment. Of course, there's again that fine line between persistence and harassment, but persistence. Don't give up, and reevaluate, and then see where is the better focus of your time, and maybe come back. I mean, I had a colleague many, many years ago who reached out to an alum like up to 30 times. It took him a couple of years. He finally met with that alum, and over time, he was able to close at the largest gift to the school because of that interest and that connection. So that's an extreme example, but my point is, don't give up after 1 or 2 times.
I love this one that just came through from an anonymous attendee. As a fundraiser, how do you respond to and educate your board members who don't understand how long the major gift solicitation process can take in building those relationships?
Yeah, Wendy. So that's a whole different topic and a webinar. Um, so here's what I would say. When I do board trainings, I'm always reminding the board members about how donors give, how long it can take, right? And so that adage of it can take up to 12 to 18 months to close a major gift. Again, whatever you define as a major gift. I will bring in personal examples of when it's been shorter and when it's been longer. And the reality is that you want to balance the pressures of your meeting your fiscal year goals with the long-term larger gifts that you want to solicit. And those are never in sync with each other. So part of it is understanding why do board members feel that impatience? They all are impatient. And how are you going to help to meet that short-term tension and resolve that, while also telling them about all the components that go into making a major gift ask, and all of those rights, those 5 rights you don't get from one conversation with a potential large gift donor. It takes time. It takes careful figuring out in conversations to build up to the right solicitation.
Okay, I think that's all we're going to get to for today, just because there are a lot of questions. But thank you so much to everyone for attending. Thank you, Barbara, for that awesome hour that you just bestowed on all of us. I mean, you can see it in the chat. Everyone is very appreciative. So thank you so much. We love having you join us.
Delighted to be here. And you all are doing such important work and changing the world. And I want to just give a shout out to you, because I know in this time of the year, it feels so heavy. It feels like it's never ending. It's like the pace is picking up more quickly every day. keep doing the work you're doing, and just remember that fundraising success comes from these relationships, whether you're doing it en masse or you're doing it one by one. And you've got lots of great resources that you can access. And I want to just wish you tons and tons of success over the coming months, and certainly in the next year or two. So wishing you all the best.
Great inspiration to end the session on. Thank you again, Barbara, and thank you everyone for attending. I hope you have a great day, and don't eat too much Halloween candy tonight.
Or you can, we won't judge.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.